All right. Good morning, everyone. This is David Krantz from the American Society of Interior Designers, and I would like to welcome you to the American Society of Interior Designers Interior Design Billing Index second quarter report. This time we're reporting on April to June 2016, and we are looking at the economic performance of the industry, what is going on with our members and the broader design community in terms of the performance of their business. We'll be talking about that and a few other issues that we've identified this quarter to discuss. And with me today on the phone is Jack Kleinhans. Jack is the principal and chief economist for Kleinhans & Associates, and he is the one who runs and does the analysis for our Interior Design Billing Index and has a great deal of experience tracking industries and their performance. Myself, as the Vice President of Research, I am proud to say that ASID really cares about research. It cares about good data. We care about informed decision-making. As much as we care about informed design, we also care about informed business practices. We want our members and the broader design community to make their business decisions with all of the latest information available, and that's what we strive to provide here. The same goes really for the trade press and broader media. We love to provide information about our industry, about our members, about what's happening in the world of interior design, and so if you have questions after this press conference is completed about any other topics, please get in touch with us. We're always able to provide you with some data points that you may not have expected or contacts and good interviews. Along those same lines, please think about questions you have for us during the course of this press conference about the material presented. I'd really like to strongly encourage you to post your questions in the GoToWebinar format. There should be an option for you to post your question. Those all get compiled for us, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So just jot your question down and we'll get right to it. Now, all of that said, I think I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Kleinhans here, who will get us started discussing the results of this quarter's Interior Design Billings Index.
Well, thank you, David. It's great to be with you again to review the report and provide you some perspective on what's going on in the interior design industry based on the information we received during the most recent survey. When you think about broadly speaking, this first chart shows the index over time. The dotted line is the actual monthly data, and then of course the solid lines are the 3-month moving average. Obviously the 3-month moving average smooths out some of the erratic nature of the data, but I'd point out that we're looking at data for the second quarter. But on the other hand, you can see it's very evident that the slowdown in the overall industry, but it's still above an expansion, but there was a deceleration in the first quarter. And we started to pick up, as shown in the chart, into the second quarter. A little backtracking that's evident in June. The ASID's IDBI nudged most recent survey nudged up. I'm sorry, I said down the 3-month moving average. And so the fact of the matter is, I think that we could take a look at it's expanding, growing a little slower than perhaps otherwise. When we looked at a little bit more in detail, how do billings compare to the previous month, the question posed is 51% said they were about the same, and 31% said they significantly increased. So decomposing the index, I think, is helpful in looking at this slide. The other dash line, looking at inquiries, certainly what might be down the road, possibly in the pipeline, also showing a positive performance, a relatively strong one. We had a score of 58.2 in June, essentially unchanged from the end of the first quarter. a tinge under its 3-month moving average, but I think it's a good indication that the design firms are seeing growth and are.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay. Sorry, Jack. It looks like we had a technical difficulty. I'm afraid. I think we need to
restart.
Start over here. For those of you on the line, we had a technical difficulty. If you've been on hold, we actually have been presenting the podcast, the webinar for a couple of minutes now. If you're getting this a second time, my apologies, but we're going to start from the top just to make sure everybody gets online and gets to hear everything that was said. So excuse us if this is happening twice, and also excuse us if you've been sitting on hold for a few minutes too long there. We're going to start from the top due to the technical difficulties, and we'll try to keep it tight. We are beginning the second quarter press conference for the Interior Design Billings Index. The American Society of Interior Designers really cares about tracking the economic performance of our industry. We survey approximately 300 interior designers every month to ask them how business is going. Is it up? Is it down? Is it the same? And several other questions to track month to month. And this really gives us the information that our members and the broader design community need in order to make informed decisions about their business. We care about how interior designers create space, and we want them to create space with the latest information about design and good design, but we also care about good business operations, and that requires market intelligence, which is what we're striving to provide here. Myself, I'm David Kranz, the Vice President of Research and Knowledge Management at ASID, and together with me on the phone today is Dr. Jack Kleinhens. He's the Principal and Chief Economist at Kleinhens and Associates. At ASID, we are always available to you, the members of the press, for data points, for research and analysis, also for contacts in the industry. If there are any quotes or stories that you're looking for, we welcome you to contact us, and we welcome you to use us as a resource to help you find the scoop that you're looking for. Today's scoop is about the performance of the industry, and I think with that, I'll pass it off to Jack Kleinhens. But actually, just before I do, again, apologies for any delays you've been having with the system. But that said, if you have any questions as you go along today, please just type them into the GoToWebinar system. You can post your question, we'll see it, and we'll have a Q&A at the end of this presentation. So please send us your questions as you go. Now on to Dr. Kleinhens. I'm going to start here with the first slide, which presents the Billings Index.
Thank you, David. It's great to be with you again. And again, if I'm a little bit repetitive, I apologize. As you can see very simply from the graph, we've seen in the second quarter certainly a better performance looking at the 3-month moving average than we had in the first quarter. The big dip occurred generally beginning around the end of November and into the early part of February and March. This was consistent with actually the performance of the overall economy, where we had a very weak first quarter, and it's not surprising that that kind of showed up in our data. More currently, the second quarter data, if you look at the dashed line, the most recent reading, that would be for June, is actually up from May, and the 3-month moving average continues to be hovering in and around well above the 50 mark. I think it's important to understand that anything above 50 is an indication that the economy I should say that business conditions for the interior design firms are basically in positive territory, expanding, indicating growth. Now, the inquiries index, there's an index for inquiries also, and the new into consideration here. Inquiries into new design projects remain relatively strong, posting a score of 58.2 in June, which is essentially unchanged from the end of the first quarter. And I think there's a little bit under the 3-month moving average, but I think indicates certainly a positive opportunities looking forward. So on our next slide, what we have graphed here is how did the firms do by billing size. Current business conditions were definitely favorable for most design firms across size classification, except for sole practitioners. Now, the vast majority of respondents to this month's survey are firms that are 9 employees or less. And so when we look at the performance, the larger firms, which would be 25 or more, or the moderate-sized firms, 10 to 24, their performance is relatively good, but there is probably some limitation due to that the number of respondents are fewer than what we see. And or maybe the better thing to say is that obviously depending upon the size of your business, the performance is probably going to vary. But sole practitioners in recent months have seen a deterioration in billing since February. Otherwise, generally speaking, billing size is hard to relate. Or better yet, the best way to think about it is decomposing the overall index into size gives you some understanding of what we're seeing and different size organizations. On the third slide that we've prepared, we're looking at how things have performed relative to regions, Midwest, Northeast, South, and West. It's pretty straightforward as we look at this. The performance had been best for the West and the South throughout the last quarter. They've actually had a good trend since the beginning of the year. Everybody kind of fell off at the end of 2015. Now, when we look at what's happening in the Northeast and the Midwest, generally Midwestern firms had done pretty well throughout most of the year, picked up in February, held on until through May. We saw a little bit of a downturn or deceleration. Again, anything over 50 is an indication that their firms are registering expansion or business conditions are being positive. Now, notice in the Northeast, we've seen a dramatic fall off, but it has stabilized under the 50 mark. And this is one of the areas that we've seen, and I could go back over several years, that there's been more volatility than most other regions that we have seen. Our next slide basically is looking at what the outlook might be. What we've graphed here is purposely how our business conditions looking, not only from sort of a consumer, that would be the conference board, but also from the construction perspective. The Dodge Momentum Index is a monthly measure of non-residential building projects and planning, and you can see that the green line, which measures over time well into the above 100. I'd be glad to report that actually the number actually the number that's shown here is showing just the first quarter. The second quarter is not being shown. My apologies here. The graph should actually be different. The green line actually moves up from 100. It's 134 to 134.7. So we're well above what's being shown here. The red line is the conference board's its expectations for the next 6 months, and their expectations was 84.6, and it's had risen about 1 point. Again, this is graph only shows us through March, but if you would visualize that, the red line would be increasing up to 84, suggesting that the outlook for a consumer is good. And then finally, our ASID number, our ASID graph, is basically the 6 months from what our firms think about. And the index, the 6-month business expectation index score of 56.4 for June is actually a little bit off from the March score. So there's a little bit of a tentativeness as we think about how maybe firms are expecting the next 6 months might look. Now, if we go to the next slide, it kind of
Actually,
helps to
Jack, before you do,
make the,
Jack, this is David going to interject here. Just want to mention that we have the correct graph in the full report, which will be distributed after the press conference is finished. So the full correct graph will be in that report. So look for it there. Now, next slide.
so let's connect the dots here. Oftentimes, your expectations of the next few months are influenced considerably by what's happened in the last few months, but still, I think a positive, positive perspective. We asked the special question this month on how did the first 6 months do compared to your expectations, and nearly 50% or nearly half said that met expectations, and notice about 24% reported exceeded expectations, but certainly there was almost an equal number or equal percentage that were disappointed at 27.4%. I'm not sure how to sort of interpret that too much more than what I've already said. I think that the consideration here is that things are in okay shape. The fundamentals in the economy remain solid for consumer spending and housing, and I think that contributes to the positive design performance in the last quarter, and also probably is a good indication about how things should remain favorable for panelists as we look out over the next 6 months. And with that comment, I'll let you pick up from where I left off, David.
All right, thank you, Jack. Actually, I'm going to add to this slide, and that is that while we see 49% met expectations, it's been my experience that we've had pretty high expectations from our membership, that whenever we ask them what are they expecting over the next 6 months, usually they're pretty optimistic. So I think that if, and especially given the relatively strong growth that the industry has had, I think we've only had 1 month of billings below 50 over the past nearly 3 years now. And so that's been a steady, strong growth, and to say that they met their expectations, I think, is actually maybe more encouraging than just kind of the neutral picture that might be presented here. That said, I'm going to move to a separate section of our report because as Jack alluded to, we ask bonus questions every month. So we ask about the economic performance of each participant's business, but then we take advantage of their willingness to complete the survey each month to ask some separate ones. And as you can see on your slide, we asked a few questions about designing for health and well-being. We had identified that health and wellness is an important trend during last year's Outlook and State of the Industry report, that is the 2015-2016 report. We identified health and wellness as an important trend. And so we wanted to ask, actually we did ask last year, so in July 2015 and then now again in July 2016, what has the change in demand been like from among clients when it comes to improving occupant health and well-being? What's the percentage change? And so what you're looking at here, survey participants had a chance to kind of put a slider wherever they wanted. If there's been no change over the past 12 months, they left the slider where it was, or slid it to the right or to the left accordingly. And as you can see here, most respondents said there was no change. That would be 35% of them. The largest percentage was there, but if you add up all the folks who said there was positive change, that's to the right, there is a noticeable marked increase in demand for design that improves health and well-being. And what I think this next slide is a bit more enlightening, in fact, because it compares 2015 to 2016. And if you look at the percentage of respondents who are seeing some kind of increase, some kind of positive increase in demand for design that improves health and well-being, you see that it's pretty steady from one year to the next. So last year, 63% of respondents had seen some growth, and this year 57% see an increase in growth, so increase in demand for health and well-being in their design. And those numbers are close enough in terms of margin of error that I would call it pretty flat. Yes, 2016 is down slightly, but it's slight enough that I would say it's steady from last year to this year in terms of the growth in demand for health and well-being design. And then but if you look at the average positive change, you can see that that actually did increase by 5%. So what that means is, and I'll flip back to the previous screen, is there are a few people who responded way out at the 100 mark. You've got more respondents up at the 50% growth. So some people are seeing really big change in demand and from last year to this year in terms of health design that contributes to health and wellness. So I think that's really an encouraging thing, and actually it's something that ASID is very much interested in. Of course, we are interested in the impact of design, the impact that design has on occupants, on the lives of well, anyone who occupies a building, so this is consistent with what we care about. So it's nice to see growth in this area. But we dug a little bit deeper too, and now we're on this slide here, which shows the different sub-trends of health, designing for health and wellness. So we identified that if you look at the column on the left, the sub-trends, you can say sit-stand workstations, both in home offices as well as corporate office place, designing for a connection to nature, wellness programs, usually thought of as a corporate wellness or institutional wellness programs that include some design element, designing for healthy behaviors, that is getting folks to eat healthy, to get up, to move around, to be active in whichever type of building they're in, and then the healthy buildings, so materials and construction choices, and then there's a whole slew of other sub-trends that were identified by our participants. But as you can see, from 2015 to 2016, the numbers again are pretty consistent in terms of their growth. They're relatively similar. The one that stands out to me is the sit-stand workstation. So in 2015, there was a 10% growth in demand for from consumers, design consumers who are looking for sit-stand workstations as part of their design solution. And this year, in 2016, there's a 20% growth in demand. So even on top of last year's growth. So I think that that sub-trend continues to be hot. We certainly saw it at NeoCon this year. I don't know if there's anybody out there who isn't offering an adjustable workstation as part of their solution, but that seems to be a continued response to demand among clients. And interesting too, I think, is the wellness programs dropped off. Just wasn't part of the equation this year compared to last year. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about health and well-being in design and what is going on with ASID and why we've chosen to highlight this topic. We did highlight it actually at NeoCon. We released or announced our new partnership with the International Well Building Institute, IWBI, and the idea is to engage the interior design community in order to accelerate the integration of health and wellness into the built environment. Again, we care about how design impacts lives. We want to study it. We want to understand it. We want to expand it. We want to make sure that that our members and the broader design community are having the most positive impact on their clients that they can, and health and wellness is part of that. And that's why we chose to partner with the International Well Building Institute, which is really growing by leaps and bounds. In particular, their Well AP, their accredited professional program, is seeking to educate designers on the elements of health and wellness in design, similar to the LEAD AP program that is well established. The Well AP program is really taking off, and we're excited to be a part of that that growth. We are in fact training our members. We're offering test prep and education on how our members can become well AP accredited, and we are offering discounts both on the exam and on exam preparation. So we're seeing a lot of interest there, and glad to be offering that. And finally, we are living examples of how health and wellness can be integrated into design. ASID opened its new headquarters office in Washington, D.C. Earlier this year. We had our open house in June, and to really terrific acclaim, the space that I'm actually sitting in right now is headed toward LEED Platinum, as well as WELL Platinum certification. That's how it was designed, and where we're heading right now. So we are trying to demonstrate this in our own space and in our own investment as an association, and it's really a lovely spot to be. If you haven't come to the ASID headquarters office, we certainly invite everyone on this call to visit and check out all the latest elements of design that contribute to health and wellness that are here, and it's really terrific. We welcome you and hope you will come. Now that said, I would like to thank you all for attending, and open it up to questions. If you have a question about any of what's things that have been said, or even questions that aren't related, you're welcome to put those into the question box in GoToWebinar on your screen. And Jack, I'm going to start with one quick question for you while we wait for some to come in. And that question is actually about wages, that we have seen sort of a softening of growth in GDP. It's been okay, and employment has been the unemployment rate has been steady at about 4.9%, as I understand it. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on with wages and how folks are getting paid?
Sure, and this is a great question, because the question is what's a reliable reading of the underlying economy? And when you start thinking about wages, there's a couple of ways to measure wages. The ones that come to mind are the average hourly earnings and the employment cost index. They are one's a quarterly indication, and the other one's monthly, the average hourly earnings. Now, what they are registering is certainly at a level about 1% lower than what we would otherwise be expecting at this point in an expansion. Income growth is somewhat of an impediment for further spending by consumers' households. The average hourly earnings is up only 2.6% on a year-over-year basis. Now, that's not bad, because it was hovering much lower. And the employment cost index actually is also around 2.6. Now, there are two different indexes that are being used here, and to what extent to the extent that they're signaling both, a positive number, that's very good. I prefer the employment cost index because it looks at a fixed number of occupations, follows those through time. Now, what's been happening certainly with wage growth is a function of the fact that we're come out of one of the deepest recessions, in history, notwithstanding the fact that, there was even a deeper one, obviously, in the Great Depression. Why aren't wages increasing faster? Partly given reasons that we hear from firms are, well, geez, I kept people on during the recession. They were getting paid. I just can't afford to get more for them right now. Second, there just hasn't been a big increase in demand overall. So I'm paying what I can pay. So that's a couple of viewpoints. You'd expect that wages might be, like I said, a little faster, higher, but it's going to be a function of also the labor market overall. And one of the things I would mention, and I'll stop here momentarily, it's all going to be local. Wages in some regions are doing much better than others. What I've just quoted are national wage rates. but they're going to differ from one part of the country to the other. So it's probably best to look at it from the standpoint of different regions, and that's probably a good indication of how things are going in terms of demand for goods and services, building, etc.
All right, good. And I'll just add that I've had some anecdotal evidence from other designers, particularly some of the bigger firms, saying that they continue to get demands for higher wages from their employees, that it's continues to be a hot job market. There's a lot of demand for employees, especially in the 7 to 12 to 15-year experience level, and that those employees are in hot demand, and so they are able to negotiate for higher wages. And we've been hearing that anecdotal evidence of upward wage pressure.
One other issue I failed to mention is that in some cases there's been more concern by employees on compensation benefits that may have been part of the gain by the household by the employee, that they're more concerned in some cases about maintaining or at least getting the kind of benefits they would like, that would offset possible wage increases. So that's one other factor that's also been quoted.
Good. Good, thank you. I've got one question here I want to make sure we get to, and that is the question is, how important are new products and technology that track the use of health-related products, for example, sit-stand work desks, to the demand that we are seeing? Is it important for clients to be able to track actual benefits of these products? It's a good question. I think that it really gets to the heart of the issue is health and wellness kind of a fad? Is it just almost a fashionable thing to be into right now? Or are we really going to see benefits that impact health and well-being, and how are they used? I think it's a terrific question, and I think from ASID's perspective, certainly from my perspective here in the research department, you can't improve something that you don't measure, is a phrase that I like to use from time to time, and that is really true for this. I think that with the sit-stand work desks and others, you have to measure the impact, which means doing, in our opinion, a pre-occupancy study to understand how folks use the space before a renovation or new building is, before renovation is completed. And then how the occupants use the space afterward. And that would, I think that the technologies that are emerging that track the use of these things are going to be really important to that. I know there's been some examples, it's a complex picture. One is that there's kind of a honeymoon effect. If you get a sit-stand work desk, you'll stand up a lot at the beginning, but then over time, people have seen that fades and then folks sit more. There's been other studies that I've seen where they're saying, yes, if you have the option to stand up at work, then people will, but then they go home and they actually sit more at home than they used to. So the actual benefits can be offset sometimes by sitting more at home. And that just adds to the complexity. I think it really is a complex, these are, human behavior is complex, human sociology and psychology is not easy, and I think that it's too simplistic to say, oh, let's put out these healthful design solutions and options, and then we just kind of assume that people use them and assume it's making them healthier. Certainly we need to be tracking that and understanding the benefits. And I think interior designers really owe it to their clients to demonstrate the impacts of the design solutions that they are recommending. I think that anytime they can do that, gather data and come back and say, well, out of the past 10 clients who've implemented my health and well-being solutions, we've seen the following, uptake and use of them. Therefore, you should do it, or even better. We've implemented these programs. We've seen that they haven't actually been effective, and you know what? You shouldn't waste your money on it. I think that kind of truthfulness is important, and you can only be truthful with those things if you measure it. So it's a good question and a good point. With that, I think we've gone over our time, and I want to respect everyone's time on this call. Again, encourage you, if you have individual questions, please email Lori, whose email is on the slide right now. Give her a call. You can reach, she can put you in touch with me directly or with Dr. Kleinhans or anybody else who might have the answers to your questions. We are a resource for you, and please consider us that. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for joining. We will be sending out a full copy of the quarterly report, the written report, as well as a recording of this press conference. Thanks, everyone.